Okay, so namaste and welcome to Satsang. So this evening, the same theme has been coming up throughout the sessions I've been doing this week with people and the work. And it really is always quite amazing how the same theme ends up running throughout the week. And so that's really what tonight is going to be about, which is always the same thing. It's always the fact that what you are is not at all what we think we are. So the truth is that you are not a limited being at all. You are omnipresent and everywhere, and you are all-knowing, all-seeing, and beyond any limitation, any suffering already right now. And tonight I want to really dig into probably the most direct way to come to realize that. And we're going to look at something which is really, if you've had enough of suffering, it's probably the most direct route that anyone can take. So I'd like you to, if you want to, if you are ready for the end of the road, if you are done with illusion, then this could be the most direct way for you to realize what you actually are, to experience it. So the most direct way to look at the root of suffering, and that is this idea that we have that we are separate beings, that we are that the only place I exist is here, and that everything else outside of me is separate to me. And that is the core of all illusion, that I am a separate being. I am this mind and this body, or a separate soul living inside a body, traveling through lifetimes and coming to some end point. And I really want to look at that tonight, and I really want to dive right into the root of that. The idea that I'm here and everything I know, everything I perceive is outside of me, different to me. Even my thoughts, my emotions, my experiences, the other beings that I perceive, the other places, the other objects, everything that I perceive is different to me. And that is the fundamental core of all illusion. And if you really, really want to see, we can disprove that immediately. Because everything you perceive, whether it be inside or outside, so inside, I mean thoughts and emotions and sensations in your body, and also outside, so other human beings, other separate beings to you, all these objects, and in fact the entire universe itself is only here when you perceive it. It's only here when you're here to know it. And when you're not here in the way that you think you are, when you're not here as a separate being, separate to everything you know, neither is any of it too. So at nighttime in deep sleep, that everything that you perceive, everything you know, including your body, is absent. Everything that you know to be true in the waking state. So your thoughts, your emotions, your beliefs, your resistance, your progress along the pathway, every other being that you could possibly perceive, and everything in the entire universe has disappeared. The conceptual universe disappears with you. And everything that you know is dependent upon you to know it. On this idea that you're separate to everything you know, that you're different to your thoughts, you're different to emotions, you're different to other beings, you're separate to them. But all of that, everything you could ever perceive, ever, and have done, is dependent upon you to perceive it. So can it really be separate to you, everything that you are aware of, everything that you've ever experienced? If it disappears when the separate self that knows it disappears too, in deep sleep, under anesthetic, and a glimpse of the awakened state, unconsciousness in general, then is it really separate to you? And what remains, more importantly, when that separate self has disappeared and everything that it perceives along with it, what remains then? If everything that you perceive and experience depends upon you to be here first to perceive it, is it really true that it's separate and outside of you? Could it be that what you think is outside of you is actually inside the greater you, the undivided self? What can you take with you tonight when you go to bed into deep sleep? Not even the concept of your body remains in deep sleep. Not even time or space remains in deep sleep. Nothing of the perceptual universe that we can experience as separate beings. All of it is gone when you're gone as a separate being. And now if you're anything like I was, you say at this point, well, everybody else is still here. You know, there's people around the other side of the world still experiencing the universe, experiencing the world in a different time zone to me. So the world can't really disappear when I disappear. It can't be dependent on me. But are those other beings still there when your waking state is gone? Can you still think about any other being, perceive any other being at all when the waking state has gone in deep sleep? Now, as I'm saying this is bringing up some fear and something inside is hitting the big red panic button. It was exactly the same for me. And eventually, at some point, this urge to find out what was true just made me push through that fear. And I would really encourage you to do that if you really want to be free right now, tonight, to see the absolute self. If I really believe that everything is separate to me, everything that I perceive is separate to me, but it's gone when I'm gone, does it really stand to reason that it is different to me? If it appears when I appear in the morning in the waking state, the separate me, and it disappears every time I'm not there as a separate being, how separate to me is it really? It's like taking an acorn and holding this acorn and saying that the oak tree that grows out of it eventually is different to the acorn. Are they really different? Or are they just different conceptual names? And the oak tree will bring a complete forest, and a forest will bring a complete set of houses made of wood that will house families and generations. And who knows what else is going to come out of that? Is all of that different to the acorn? Separate to the acorn? So if my perceptual universe, if my world and all the separate beings I think are in it disappear when I do as a separate being at nighttime, even time and space itself, even my body, I'm unaware of my body in deep sleep completely. How real is it? How true is it then that it is separate to me? And what remains when the separate me and everything it perceives have disappeared? Then the one undivided self is revealed in the absence of someone that knows and everything that someone knows. There is only the one undivided self that is everywhere. And no matter how your brain tries to get around this, if you allow it to try every single way, you can prove to yourself right now that there is nothing outside of you, nothing separate to you, the real you. That everything we are perceiving right now as separate and outside of you, including me, is actually happening inside you, appearing inside you as different shapes. Can the oak tree be any different than the acorn? Can anything that I perceive be different to the perceiver? Where really is the separation? Is there any? When even the perception of time and space disappears, when the waking state has gone, then how real is it anyway? And what is all this that's left? The universe of separate objects and separate beings is unreal, but what is real is the one self that's here, in amongst, in between, underneath, and everywhere. But while we're sort of holding on firmly to this idea that everything I perceive is separate to me, outside of me, then we're not going to be able to grasp this seeing that really, truly you are everywhere, all the time. What if the waking state is what contains this separate me and everything that it knows? Anything that isn't here permanently has to be discarded as not the ultimate truth. So if you really want to come to the end of the road, see what can survive in deep sleep. What can you take with you into deep sleep? Not even your separate self, not even your body, not even time or space. And we know this instinctively. We can be deeply asleep and wake up and we're sure we've been asleep for hours and it's been half an hour. And the opposite has been experienced too. Where are all those separate beings when you go to bed at night? Do they still exist? Yes, but not as separate beings, as the one real self. Are there really 7 billion of us, or is there the one self dreaming in 7 billion human bodies that it's separate in each one, believing everything else that exists to be outside of it and different? And what happens when we allow this assumption to collapse inside ourselves? That there is nothing outside of you at all. There can be nothing other than you. When the known, what you know, comes to an end, there is only the knowing. And when the known comes to the end, everything is perceived to be you. If we just don't hold so tightly to this idea that what I know is different to me, if we just don't so firmly insist that that is real and true, and we're open to see, then you can have an end of the road seeing right now. Everything depends upon you. Everything depends upon you and disappears with you. Each morning when the waking state appears, the perceptual universe reappears with it, along with the separate perceiver of it. When the perceiver and the perceived vanish, there is only the one self. And I'm not talking about some apocalyptic death of the ego. I'm just talking about every time you're not thinking about anything, none of those separate objects exist outside of you. Every time you're unconscious for any reason at all, the whole universe that you perceive disappears with you. What if the world, the universe that we're so sure, and all these other beings that we're so sure exist really only between our ears and nowhere else? If it's true that there is something outside of you, separate to you, then you must be able to experience it all the time, and it's just not possible. The very moment you stop looking through your human senses and you stop using your mind, when the body goes to sleep, every ounce of separation from anything else disappears. And we love that state. We absolutely love deep sleep. We feel rested, we feel refreshed, even just from a small moment during the night where there is no thought activity going on at all, no dreaming or anything. And you can walk around like that with your eyes open, not perceiving anything outside of yourself, not believing that there is anything other than you. Everything that we hold as other, as separate, is going to disappear when the waking state goes, because it's only an appearance. Like I said, this may bring up some fear inside from the mind that says that it's going to lose everything if it really allows this seeing. And remember that feeling. I'm going to lose everything if I allow this to come in, this real seeing to come in. But what you gain is yourself, the seeing that what you are is everywhere, and you cannot, nothing can ever be outside of that self. It's undivided and whole and pure, even when the human being is believing that separation is real. It never really was. What can you take with you into your deep sleep? What will survive that deep sleep state from your normal waking state? If you can experience your whole world in a dream at night, is it really out there anyway? I can go to sleep tonight and have a deep dream and imagine that I lived 70 years in a different country and had a family and learned a different language. And all this dream is happening in about half an hour as my body's lying in bed. Where are those other beings that I created in that dream? And could I be dreaming with my eyes open, calling it being awake, the waking state? Could I be having a similar dream with my eyes open? Just because every single person you encounter on this planet will agree that they are separate to you doesn't mean it's ever been so. So if you invite this in, if you take this deeper and investigate what can exist without you, and if it cannot exist without you, it is you. It must be you. It's like saying, my arms and my legs are, they're separate to my body. But they're everything that you perceive in the waking state, everything must also be you. And this can be the end of the road for suffering if you allow it. This can be liberation right now if you allow this completely. What can survive? What can you take with you from your perceptual world at nighttime? What disappears at nighttime is the whole labels and concepts and names and nouns that we have for everything. It all disappears. Even this me that we think we are disappears. What remains doesn't really have a name, but it is also you. You could call it you. And you'll still be able to use your mind. You'll still be able to have a sense of I know and the things that you know. You'll still be able to function and remember each other's names and all of that. There'll still be the appearance of a separate universe. But it's known to be the self, the one self, the one undivided being. What if your in here is really much bigger than you think it is? What if everything you think is out there actually exists inside the greater version of you, including your separate sense of self? It's appearing inside the greater undivided self that you are. Will you accept and admit your everywhereness? Will you question until you come to a clear seeing that nothing is outside of you? What are the rewards of this questioning, and why would we want to do it? Why would we want to lose the idea that there is something separate to you, something outside of you? Well, the rewards are total absence of fear and a total inability to suffer, an unshakable, unbreakable peace that never ends. It's about as direct as I can say it. If you would like to ask any questions or share anything, you can click on participants and scroll down to the bottom and click on raise hand, and it'll let me know that you want to ask a question. In the meantime, while we're waiting for questions, if you are confused by what's just been said, you don't have to understand it to realize it. That's the really good news. Just to want to know that place where it's true, what I've just said, is going to allow it to be revealed to you from the inside. It's probably best not to try to understand it with your mind anyway. Okay. Would anyone like to ask anything? Okay, Gaina?
Hiya, you all right? Hear me okay?
Yep, can.
Yep. So I always, whenever you talked about things being disappearing when you go to sleep, it used to always
Panic.
It's getting a little bit clearer, but I just wondered if there's anything more I can do to kind of see that a little bit deeper, really.
Okay. Why are you so sure that, we can look at it now, or it's just a good question to contemplate. Why am I so sure that everything is separate to me? That's probably the thing to look at. Everything disappears, doesn't it? In deep sleep. When you go to sleep tonight, there'll be nothing remaining that is you, your life, your relationships, your awakening even.
Yeah,
it's all gone.
I think I'm like you when you said that, yeah, but just because it's the experiencing's gone from this body doesn't, I'm still thinking that it's still existing, if you see what I mean.
Existing somewhere else, it's happening somewhere else.
Well, yeah, existing for somebody else.
And
Or
how do you know that? How do you know that when you're not here? Are you sure that there are any other beings with you in deep sleep?
well,
This is a really good investigation. I'm really enjoying this. I hope you are too. Right on the spot now, but we're so sure that, okay, even when I'm asleep, there are other beings that are still perceiving. It doesn't all just disappear. But those other beings have disappeared in deep sleep, haven't they? All that's left in deep sleep is you. That's the only thing that survives. Or even if I gave you an anesthetic now and you know, you lost consciousness, everything would also disappear now, wouldn't it? It would vanish into and all of this would still be here, but not in the way that we think.
Right. Okay. I see what you mean. Yeah.
Our mind doesn't want to see this because it thinks that if you admit this, that all of this is just going to literally disappear, you know. But it will remain as it always is, which is the self. The one undivided self is everywhere. All our ideas about separate beings and separate things, and our memories of separate things we've experienced, all of that is gone. You cannot take any of it with you.
Okay. So, right. So the things are not things anymore.
And were they things anyway?
Yeah.
I really do appreciate you being brave like this and sort of, you know, pushing to find out more, because it's really very useful for everyone, you know. If things seem to be here, but then suddenly they seem to disappear, how real were they anyway? What we thought they were, at least.
Yeah.
If you go to bed tonight and go into deep sleep, you can't think about me. I'm totally absent from your experience then, aren't I? So,
but I suppose I'd be
your
thinking,
ability to think about me as a separate.
yeah.
Sorry, what were you going to say?
I suppose mine still thinks that you're existing in your house.
How do you know?
But yeah. I don't know.
All sustained in memory, isn't it?
Mm.
Memory of these separate beings. Let's play a little game for a moment. Let's pretend that you forgot the names for everything. For your own, you know, like your own name, my name, everything, like chair, table. Let's just pretend that you couldn't remember the name for anything you look at. Like it's completely gone. How different would your experience be?
Well, it would. There would be no difference.
Would you know what is you and what is me?
No.
To give you a little bridge to that knowingness that I was talking about, you know, that it's the whole universe of names and labels that disappears at night time, isn't it? With deep sleep. And a separate me that knows them all. Yeah, there's this huge idea that I'm here and everything I know is out there. But the ideas we hold about things are actually in here, aren't they?
Yeah.
So what is out there? You know, what actually is all this then? It cannot be the separate objects that we thought, you know, it cannot be a universe full of separate things and beings that we thought.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, so it's starting to. I think yeah, I've just had a bit of resistance from mind. I think on that about.
We'll get a lot of resistance from mind on
Okay.
this. Yeah. I remember myself and mine going, "You absolutely crazy saying that the universe doesn't exist. It doesn't exist outside of you, separate to you, but it exists as the one self. Everything is the one self."
So in the waking stage, just that you are able to perceive self as solids through, perceive self appearing as object, whatever appearing is without labels.
Yeah, a separate self reappears, and then the illusion that everything is separate to me and outside of me is sustained by my senses perceiving. You know, if I was to prod your body, it would feel solid, and different to me. So this whole idea of all these separate things here, objects in this room, is sustained by the idea that I'm here and they're outside of me, separate to me.
Okay. Right.
If you asked a very small child what all this was, they would say something very different to what most adults say, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
It probably wouldn't have a name or even any concept of me and mine or you and yours. All that comes with our growing up and then into adolescence and adulthood.
Yeah, and conditioning and things. Right. Okay. No, that's
very brave of you. Very brave.
No, that's helped because I felt like I wanted to push that a little bit. So
I got to this point where I have to know now. I have to know. Even if I actually realize this and everything does vanish, then it's worth it to find out what's true. But nothing changed out there at all. It was just the realization that all this is me. I am everywhere. I'm not just here, and all this stuff I'm perceiving can't be separate to me.
Yeah, and I think that's, I've really investigated the separateness. I think it was just that whole concept of things disappearing when I went to sleep. But
the thingness of it disappears every time you're not thinking about it. Have you ever said a word, repeated a word over and over again until it loses its meaning and sounds really strange? Have you ever really looked at something and wondered what it actually is? It will lose its thingness. It will lose its memory that you have of it. Even while the waking state's there, you can kind of prove this is untrue.
Right. Okay. I'll try that.
Have fun with that.
No, that was useful. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Bidea? Everyone's afraid to ask a question now in case I destroy their universe,
So, two questions then. When the self wants to go into deep, when things disappear, why does it take so long for the self to disappear into the deep sleep? And I'm not going to say why others don't. The appearance of the other can be out like a light, and the other.
I'm not quite sure what you're asking. Are you asking why it takes so long to fall asleep?
Yeah, a simple question for trying to.
I don't really know the answer to that one. I guess you could say it takes longer for our mind to slow down, our breathing to slow down. But that which is watching those, it doesn't sleep anyway. It's that would just be something that is individual to each body mind, I guess. For me, it was still about 3 seconds. If I'm going to say goodnight to one, I have to do it before I lay down. or else I'm gone. But I know some other people, it's not like that, you know.
Okay. And also, so everything that's of the apparent other is really just an appearance for the self to wake up to itself. Because I remember when I went to, well, for the sake of the story, it was in India. I was there for a couple of months, but when I got back, I remember my mum saying, you know, didn't you miss us? Didn't you think, you know, didn't you miss us? And I remember saying, well, only if I thought about everyone. And I didn't realise she was really upset over that. But it was really true that no one really existed except what was happening now, unless they come into a thought, and then you'd attach a feeling to the children and things like that. But in those
Only
moments,
as separate beings, they don't exist unless we're thinking about them. You know, we kind of cook up the separate beings in our thinkingness, and it's sustained by memory then, isn't it? And memory of experiences with those beings, and that universe of separate beings is sustained in our thinkingness. But it all exists all the time as the self. But the separateness of it all, we have to constantly keep re-energizing that. You know, this is why mind is always thinking about the same thing again and again and again, and you know, sort of rehashing experiences. And it's not the natural state to be perceiving everything to be separate to us, and it costs us a lot of energy. It's got to keep constantly, you know, being fed energetically.
so the self is really just wanting to know itself through different concepts, and then over time has believed in those concepts, and then but it's all for the self. But even the self's already awake, so you know, dreaming that it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First, the only way it has to know itself is through the egoic sense of self, which discerns based on appearance what things seem to be like. And because everything seems to be different to me, it feels different, you know, sounds different, smells different, it concludes that everything is different, separate. So from the world of our egoic perspective, this illusion is sustained endlessly, that I'm here and everything else is outside of me, because I keep having experiences and memories with these separate beings, and all of that is, you know, endless in its you know, in ability to sustain that illusion. It can go on forever, except that it's not true, and therefore it kind of really it gnaws at the self, you know, it wants to stop dreaming, come back to the wholeness.
Yeah. So that's what it means by it wants to wake up. It's just a word, and like to stop dreaming is another word for it.
Yeah, just to come out of the idea that there's anything separate to it, which is only an idea. Only illusion only exists in thoughts, which is why it all disappears in deep sleep anyway, when there's no thinkingness going on. So on one level it's dreaming, on the other level it's absolutely not. We had this in the intensive, right? Am I awake? Yes or no? Yes to both, you know. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Good questions, thank you. Ian, Maggie?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
I've forgotten the phrase. Hang on. When you were talking, there was something you said that I couldn't quite. There was something about me that I couldn't quite follow the logic of it, and mind kept going back to it to try and like work it out. It was something to do with something can't exist if it doesn't appear at the same time as you. Something. Anyway, when I stopped trying to work out what you were saying from a mind point of view, everything just kind of relaxed and just went, I don't really need to understand this.
Yeah.
So I don't really have a question as such. I can't remember the phrase. My mind was frankly trying to follow your logic, and I was berating myself slightly for not being able to follow the logic.
It wasn't logic anyway. Totally
No.
confusing to logic, isn't it?
Yeah. So is that okay, just to not be able to understand it?
There's two ways to realize what I've said is true, and one is to think about it endlessly. Try really, really, really hard to understand it, and then completely fail, and then give up, and then realize it's true spontaneously. Or you can give up trying to understand it now.
Yeah.
And just gently ask, what's it like to know that that's true, that there's nothing outside of me, and sort of just wait for it to be revealed. But you must look at anything that's in the way of that, any belief that comes up in the way of that, of course. But one way is effortless, the other is a lot of hard work and doesn't really work, actually. I tried, I really tried, believe me, I really tried. Very hard.
Thank God for that, because I could not. Can I take the easy option then, because I can't follow?
Absolutely, highly recommended. It's just mind can't figure this out anyway. If there is some epiphany or aha moment that comes about it, it will come spontaneously unasked for. It'll just be, oh, that's just so clear all of a sudden. When 2 seconds before it wasn't, just from wanting to see.
So what? Sorry, I'm really sorry. What what's the easy way again? Just repeat. That's going straight. Whoosh.
Maybe better just to watch this again, huh?
I'll watch it again. Sorry,
just to question. Is it? I'd like to see, why. I'd like to know that nothing is separate to me, or I'd like to be, have that seeing, or yeah.
Okay. Sorry about
Very
that.
good. It's fine. Mind, it's like first time you kind of grasp this seeing, it's like a slippery bar of soap, and it just gone again,
Yeah, I get that. I really get that. I understand that bit. That's the first thing I've understood you said the whole time.
Luckily, you don't need to understand me to realise what I've realised, which is very good news for everyone, isn't it?
Good job.
That's great.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, Steve. We'll take down to Caroline, and then we'll stop there for time. So.
Okay, can you hear me all right?
I can, yeah.
Yeah. I've just been writing some I thought were very intelligent questions here, but they dissolved as Ian asked me a question. Like he said, you don't need to understand this. And I thought, but immediately mine were trying best to understand.
Of course, it's gonna, of course, it's going to. That's what it does, right? That's its thing.
And I'll just say a little bit of a progress thing. I really it will creep in that. Wait, you haven't seen this, Steve, so you can't be awake. We're in there, and I said, no, I'm not having that one. So I pushed that away and forgot about it.
Excellent.
Yeah, and I think, are we saying then that things are still there, but not as we see them? Objects are here, I can touch and feel them, so they are there, but not as I see them.
It's here, but it's not what you think it is. It's not a separate object, even though it looks like one. There aren't really any objects, because if they were, they would be separate to me, outside of me. Upon realizing this to be true, there will still seem to be a whole universe of objects. Right now, I'm seeing the same thing that you'd be seeing if you were sat here, but the understanding is different inside, that it's not at all what it looks like or seems to be. You
But
know?
yeah, but I've heard somewhat like it's only light projected into your mind, and somewhere in your brain it's all condensed and mixed about with it comes back as this picture, and then it's produced in your mind, which is pitch black.
Yeah.
Is
All
that
you're
what,
actually seeing is vibration.
yeah, and the head turns it into something else.
Yeah, it gives it a name, and then with that name comes a whole bunch of memories and thoughts and experiences and everything, and time begins then, because you suddenly remember seeing this thing before, and we never actually question if it's actually there now, in the way. Yeah.
So it's that disappears when I go to sleep.
The thingness of it, yeah, the thingness.
Okay.
And what remains is the nothingness that everything actually is. The nothingness, the formlessness that is what everything actually is.
Yeah. So if I didn't have a language, you see, it probably would look as I don't really know. You can't imagine how it'd be, but say language can be a barrier, can't it? It sort of dissects everything.
Yeah, it's an approximation at best, isn't it? Because language is dualistic, but it can point to something, that, and we can point. Language is good at describing where the illusion lies, and then just enough to see that. If we're just not so absolutely convinced for a second that everything is separate to us, and there's a curiosity to see what actually everything really is it really outside of me? Then, then we'll have an opening there to see what's true.
Yeah. I'm thinking now, I don't specifically think everything's separate to me and everything's moving different. Unless I think about it. If you mention it, have a look at this now, then you see it. Maybe I'm doing it. But generally, my day-to-day life, I don't even think that way. So maybe that's going on without me. You know what I mean? So I'll just into one and say, let me pick the guitar. Oh, my guitar's there. Then it seems separate. But generally,
when you think about it, yeah.
Generally, I don't bother too much of it, making too much of it. Yeah.
No, it's exactly right. Nothing is perceived as separate until we think about it. And that's why we love deep sleep, because there's no thinking, there's no separation there. But you can feel like that with your eyes open all the time. keep working on it, yeah. Good.
All right then. Well done. See you later.
Thank you. Sophie?
Hello.
Hiya.
Just the sense that I have to take these off. Still hear me? Yeah. Just the sense that the seeing that you're talking about really come about when the separate self relinquishes that sense of itself as a controlling, because then that seems to me to be the kind of the kind of understanding that then from there then the kind of unity would just be obvious. Does that make sense?
It does, but I have to play devil's advocate here.
Hang on, I have to plug you back in because I can't hear you now. Sorry, go on.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I had to play devil's advocate and ask, can the separate self relinquish anything if it's not really here?
Yeah, that's what really needs to be.
Yeah. Because if we wait for our separate sense of self to kind of let go, we'll be waiting a very long time, as I can personally testify to. It's much easier to just to come to a direct seeing, to experience through self-inquiry that there isn't a separate being, and therefore this is another way to see what I've been saying tonight. If the separate being that I'm so sure knows all this stuff out here isn't here when I look for it, where does that leave everything that this separate being? My
Perceive.
whole world then is a little suspect inside my mind. If it's all hanging on this imaginary separate eye that I cannot actually find when I look.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's. I mean, I feel that's what's needed. You know, more inquiry around that, because that then dissolves everything else. I mean, that's seeing then, as you said, you know, there's no separate self. So how can there be separate anything? It all, you know, whatever the separate self is seeing, no longer is
There's
in
two,
relation to it.
yeah,
There's
there's
no
two main
relationship.
ways to see it, and the classic is, as we've talked about tonight, everything disappears when I do, then it must be me. And the other way is, if I'm not here in the way that I think I am, I meaning I can't find a separate being, I only find my formlessness, then is anything really separate to me? You know, either way will be, you know, if you're completely obsessive like I was, you do both ways, you know, as often as possible, like chiseling away at both ends. But just to want to see, you know, is going to be, this isn't a hard work thing. You can't really work hard at recognizing this, although our mind will try. You know, it's just beyond the grasp of the mind.
It's just that the contracted energy that keeps it in place. So there's a sense that there's a longing for it to relax, and that relaxation would come with that seeing, I presume.
It's the other way around. With the seeing comes the relaxation.
Yeah.
If you wait for the relaxation first, it's just going to be
Impossible.
yeah. If instead I can recognize I'm not separate to anything, then all fear will dissolve and all tension will leave the body. For most of us, that's a gradual process, which is a good thing because there's energy shifts and everything go on, but it's definitely got to be the seeing first.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Fantastic. We'll go to Claire.
Hi, Helen.
Hiya.
When you were talking, something came to me, and it's a bit like half of it's fallen out my head now. But I've been looking at pain this week, but it's obviously not there when I'm asleep, but I feel it when I'm awake. But it's to do with the body, so so what it does limit the body, but I don't have to attach an emotion to it or a label to it, because it's not part of the real self, because it's not there when I'm asleep. Does that make sense? Do you see what I'm sure I thought of it better at one point, but yeah, it's gone.
I understand. Yeah, it's but even in the waking state, there can be just that sensation there, and nobody who is separate to it. We're not holding it as separate to us, and it will be a very different experience then.
Yeah.
You know, it won't feel, there won't be anyone suffering with it. You know, it can be there without suffering in relation to it, which is what is happening. I mean, if the body's in pain during deep sleep, you wouldn't know anyway, would you?
No.
And if you take a painkiller, or if I was to give you, you know, really strong medication for the pain, it would just take away your ability temporarily to go into relationship with that pain, into division with it.
Yeah.
So that's what we're pointing towards in this seeing. Like, if I'm sure that this is separate to me, I'll be in resistance with it. You know, and it seems to be, it really does seem to be, but that investigation will, you know, or even the self-inquiry that we were talking about previously. Is there anyone here that's suffering from this? Even though our mind is sure that it is, when we actually look, all we
Yeah.
find is silence or emptiness, or
It's just part of how this body works, that sometimes and there's no reason or need to attach a label or to find I get to detach the emotion from it, kind of thing. That sounds,
yeah, you're not holding it as separate. You know, can you, just like any emotion, any thought, any sensation, can you be really curious as to what it is? You know, we're also, we have this label pain, and then we have a lot of thoughts and feelings about pain, a lot of memories that go with it, a lot of previous experiences, a lot of projections around it, how long it's going to take to go, how bad it is this time, what you can do to help it. All of that comes with that label, doesn't it?
it does.
I'm not for a second talking about ignoring it or not looking after the body. I'm just sort of looking at how we are we in relationship, in division with it, or are we, is it just what is inside the great self? Because it's
Like
a very
an
different
accept.
experience. There's a huge difference, a whole universe of difference between my body is in pain, I'm in pain. There is a huge difference between them, you know, so it's really, you might not be able to ever get rid of the physical pain, but we do not need to suffer from it.
Mm.
You know, and I am talking from my own experience here, you know, with quite intense pain. It's the projections around it that keep us separate to it, feeling separate to it, and therefore suffering. But the suffering comes from the division, you know, the idea that this is outside of me, out of my control, out of my self. You know, I'm here and it's affecting me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you probably stumbled upon that accidentally in meditation anyway, where you're not doing anything with the pain as a person, you know, not resisting it or not doing, and it's a different experience.
Yeah. Just was that thought that obviously I don't interact with it and take it with me when I'm asleep. So,
And what's missing in deep sleep is the separate being, isn't it?
yeah.
The I that knows everything that it knows, it is all gone deep sleep, and there's just the one self remaining, you know, that's showing up as a human body, that's sleeping and maybe showing up as pain, but there's no personal entity suffering from the pain.
Yeah.
You know, so it's that's the difference, isn't it? And it
Yeah.
doesn't need to be, you know, with some investigation, we can be in the same, holding it the same, even when we're awake in the waking state. You know, if we're not sort of projecting about it and remembering, and, you know, an intense curiosity as to what it actually is, what pain actually is.
Mm.
You know, it will open up a different experience for you.
Thank you.
Good. Lovely. Amy?
Hiya.
Hiya, how you doing?
I'm good. I forgot I had my hand up. So I had just a huge amount of frustration at the beginning that came up, and so I was just the first part of it where you were speaking was just inquiring into everything that was coming up, really, the frustration, and then like beliefs around can't get this, not gonna understand this, all that kind of stuff. So things have calmed down a little bit. And I think when Gaynor and some the others were talking, where my mind went with it was like, well, if nothing exists when I'm sleeping, then people tell me what they were doing after I was sleeping. So how does that work? So I just wondered if you could answer the mind.
Other bodies may be talking, but is that other beings? No thing exists when you as a thing don't exist. All right. If you're somebody could come to you after you wake up and say, I just spent the last 8 hours doing this. And mind says, see, there's a separate being there. But what's really happening is that there's a body appearing in front of your body talking. Is that evidence enough that that being is outside of you and separate to you? Is that enough evidence for us? For our mind, it is, definitely. But if we dig just a little deeper, where was that separate being? Are you absolutely convinced that being is separate to you when deep sleep is there? And no, we're not. We're not convinced of anything. Only when the waking state comes back are we sure that this is a different being to me, separate. That idea comes back with the waking state. Frustration, huh? I just calmed down and now I've started asking my question and now I'm really
Yeah, there's humor with it though. It's kind of like it's kind of, yeah, I feel like it's I can feel like the need coming up to know, or the frustration, but it's kind of, yeah, there's humor with it somehow.
we could prod a little deeper if you want to. We could poke a little. Let's say you wake up in the morning and this other person comes to tell you what they've been doing while you're asleep, and if we really ask the question, what is this other being that I imagine is separate to me? We can sort of prod into that. Mind will say, well, obviously, it's a human being in front of me, but what really is that? It's a body, a human body. And then we can ask, well, what really is the body? And where is the separate being? Right, when you're awake, I mean, right now, where do I exist outside of you? All you're looking at right now is a human body, isn't it? Where's the evidence that I'm outside of you, separate to you? Isn't it only really existing in your head, in a set of thoughts, and maybe in my head too, if I was to believe that we're different to each other?
I think, as you said, it's the senses. It's feeling like, if you were in front of me and not on the phone, but at the moment it's on the phone, so it's kind of like I can touch the phone.
Yeah. But let's say I was sat in the room next to you right now. Where would be the evidence that I am separate to you? What evidence would you have that I'm outside of you, different to you?
It's just that simple thing of being a separate body.
So the bodies are separate.
Yeah.
What about, have you got any evidence that, me that's in the body, talking to you right now through the body, is there any evidence you can give me that I am outside of you, separate to you? Bodies are separate. We could dig even deeper into that if you want, what the body actually is. It feels solid, but what really is it?
So from what I understand, it's, there's this kind of, there's lots of names for it, but this quantum field, and then it's our senses that are, like Steve was saying, like gathering the information, then turning it into something. And then thought is saying, oh, that's Helen, and she's so many years old, and she comes from this place, and and then there's that kind of story, more causing more separation.
So the idea of separation, the idea of me being separate to you, is coming from some thoughts in your head and
Mm.
some sense perception.
Mm. Mm. And because I can see that, like, when when things dissolve, people change radically. When things dissolve in me, their behavior changes and how they speak to me and all of that kind of thing. So I've had that experience again and again. So from that angle, I can see it. It's this kind of physical.
Let's just dig a little deeper. I'm really enjoying this. Can we just dig a little deeper?
Mm-hmm.
So if I exist separately to you only as a bunch of sense perceptions, right? If you had your eyes closed and you weren't touching my body, would you know I was there? If I didn't make a sound and you weren't using your senses?
No.
So where do I actually exist as a separate being? Is it not inside you already? Meaning, as a separate being, I am a bunch of memories and a bunch of sense perceptions and thoughts and projections. What is actually outside of you? When you said there was a separate body, there's still a body sat in the room with you, in our example that we're using. But what is that body actually? Is it a body? When we break it down, not literally break it down, hopefully, but when we actually look at what it is, and look closer at it, what is that body?
So it's the again, it's like the vibration that's being recognized by the brain as solid.
Yeah, because you're not actually seeing a body when you look at me, you're seeing vibration. And these words of vibration coming in through your ears. It's your brain that says that's a human body, and that's Helen. And all of that is inside you, isn't it? If you just kind of play with this a little bit and, where is Helen actually? It all gets a bit suspect that I'm outside of you and separate to you. All you can really find is another body.
My mind goes to like, but then you're speaking and that's appearing. I guess there's still a belief that I'm speaking, so that when I hear speaking, it's coming from a separate entity, like I believe that I am.
Even when you hear my words, you hear them inside that body there, don't you? They've got everything happens inside you, as that, a quick way to really investigate this is to find out what the human body actually is, and you can use a self-inquiry question for that. What is the body? What is my body? And or anybody. Just to break down, we don't even have to work hard at this. I know we spent a long time discussing it through all these questions, but just to be willing to see, and not trying to work it out, that delicate combination, so the amount of frustration would indicate that something mind will try to figure it out and it won't be able to do it, and it's, hence the frustration. But just to this openness, what is real then, and a real wanting, a curiosity, and it will be shown inside. You have no evidence at all that I am separate to you or outside of you that survives without your waking state. It disappears completely with your waking state.
So is that so if somebody comes and says, I've been doing all this stuff while you've been asleep, so that's part of the story inside of me?
Yeah, a body has appeared in front of you and is talking, but is that enough evidence of a separate being outside of you?
Okay. Yeah, okay.
I think as I remember, what I ended up doing with this was thinking about it until my head was about ready to explode, and then I just kind of, all right, I'm going to try the simple approach, and Just a
inquire.
question like we're doing tonight in this conversation is immensely valuable, because it's exposing, where mind says yes, but that's where we've previously been agreeing. And if we look at those things when they come up, yes, but there's other beings when I'm asleep, there's still other beings. Well, how do you know? And then we can look into that like we've done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I wanted to expose all those bits because otherwise they're just swimming around there, aren't they?
Yeah. And that's all I did, was to just question when the things came up like that. Why am I so sure that everything is separate to me? And I really had no reliable evidence when I looked at it all. It was just like this mass hypnotic agreement that we all have. There are different shapes moving around, different forms, appearance forms. But are they actually outside of me? Well, if I can't find myself when I actually look as an object, as a thing, how do I know what's inside or outside of me? The whole idea that everything is separate depends on this assumption that I'm only here.
Yeah.
And you cannot prove that when you actually look. All you find is your formlessness and your everywhereness. Very good. I've enjoyed that. You probably didn't, but I did.
No, I did. Thank you. Thank you.
Lovely. Thanks. Last but not least is Sharon.
Sorry. Hi.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm good. I can relate to what I think is so powerful is that everybody sharing helps me.
It's a tough subject, this, because mind gets frustrated with it very quickly, as we've all experienced, and it's helpful for everyone to give their little perspective on it, because it helps everyone break through some stuff. So
yeah, everybody that shared, I told you this, but I have to sit sometimes and contemplate this story. When I was a little girl, my parents were fighting, and my grandmother was sitting on the steps and telling me that this was a dream. And then I don't know how long after I was dreaming at night, and I went, oh, I wonder who the other people are in my dream. This is when I was a little older. I don't know the ages. And I said, they would have to be me. And, I had a lot of mystical experiences. One was that I was on a bridge with my husband. It was a beautiful, we were walking, and it was, with a river, and a little bridge to go over. And we had just really got acquainted, well, it was more than that. It was a couple months, but we started to kiss. It was raining, and we disappeared. We both talked about that. And we were amazed. When I say disappeared, I don't know if that really happened, but he actually said that that's what happened for him. And we were like, wow, we never experienced that before with anyone. But then we forgot about it, because the ego doesn't want you to remember.
It can't remember, can it? Because it's inherently dualistic. Okay. So it cannot remember anything that happens as the one, can it? It just literally cannot. It's incapable of. It has to exclude that as not relevant to me, because I'm sure that it's being separate to me.
I mean, yeah, I was driving in a car one day, and I felt this overpowering love come over me. And these are just experiences. So I get so frustrated that I am not where you are. Not that I mean, you and I talked about that. It's very normal to feel jealous. Like, I want to just be where Helen is already. So what Ian was sharing, like, okay, let's just tell us, just wake us up right now, because we've had it. And it's just, on Monday you were saying, like, if we would just stay like this the rest of our life, would we be okay? And that is something that I have, contemplated, because I don't want to be feeling bad that I'm not completely awake, that I still believe the mind.
Why are you so sure you're not where I am?
Actually, I am. It's just the mind that's not.
Why? What evidence have you got that your
well, I'll tell you what
is different to mine?
Right. I mean, I can relate to Claire and Steve. Steve has chronic fatigue. They label these labels. Claire has rheumatoid arthritis. I have fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue. So right away, the physical, the thinking mind is the thing that's really translating my pain. And I know that. That's why I feel the pain. Sometimes I'll do a mantra just to not feel the pain. And when I do that mantra, I do not feel the pain. And if I exercise right and stuff, but that's what makes me feel like if I get nauseous or if I get a headache every morning, you know, my crown has space in it. So in the eyes, every morning I wake up with a violent headache. And I remember you telling me you had that. Well, I'm not going to sit there and feel that pain. I take Excedrin because, you know, I grew up with a mom. She was never my mom. She was in me, right? And all she was in pain. I mean, polio was not easy, and she had chronic pain, and she spoke about it all the time. Now, you know that every sibling I have is in pain. So is it okay for me just to be where I'm at? And what I do is at night, I sit there with contemplations like, you know, why do humans suffer? Because they want to be happy. Well, a human can't be happy because it's dualistic. So the happiness is the true happiness is the space, is the awareness.
Don't be so quick to agree that you're in pain. The body hurts, but is there evidence that you're in pain?
So wouldn't it be easier if I said the body's in pain, and not even my body, but the body's in pain, and that's it?
Yeah, just don't be sure of anything. Don't be so
Okay.
sure that you're not where I am. You know, the moment you grab a hold of that one, you're on an endless journey.
I know. That's
Endless journey. You can never arrive when you start from the assumption that you're different to me. What if that's not true at all? Right? That anyone on the satsang is in a different state or less realized or something like that. What if that is just not true? And the only evidence we have of it is our experience, which is being created by that assumption. What happens then when we drop that assumption? Could it be I'm already where I'm trying to get to? You know, that's going to take you on a whole different road. Very short road.
I will be listening to this. You know, for the intensive I listened to, I was sharing in the group last night. I listen to it all the time because every time I listen to all of your teachings, I get something. The noumenon gets more away. It seems to know who it is. You know, so it's like, you know, that's the kind of.
So don't start your spiritual work from the assumption that there is anything you have to do or become to realize the self, you know?
Right. Well, I think I feel guilty because I run and I take Excedrin because and like when you told me about Adyashanti having pain, I went, well, I don't want pain. I mean, like he's okay with this pain, but I'm not. I take Excedrin and I don't want to feel guilty. And I do sometimes. I feel like, you know, you're cheating, you know, because you're taking medicine. And I just, it doesn't mean anything, right?
All forms of healing have their place. But we should also recognize what's true on a spiritual level. Any assumptions that we're holding on to are going to cause a discomfort in our beingness, a discord, a disharmony, which will then appear as negative emotion and so on, you know. So look at what the major assumptions are, you know, and then see if you can orient your practice, your inquiry from the assumption. You know, what if it's not true that I'm any different than Helen, you know? Isn't that the core assumption? Like this being is in this place and I'm trying to get to that experience or to that realization. What if that's just not true? What if that is creating the journey?
And keeping it going.
And keeping it going and giving us very realistic experiences of not being there yet.
Yeah.
We're reversing down the road, getting further away from the awakened state, going, are we nearly there yet? You know, and then wondering why we don't seem to have the same. If you don't count your experience as evidence, you have no other evidence that you're not where I am. Your experience is coming from the assumption that I'm not there yet. Sure. What happens when you drop that and don't know anything for a second? You have very different.
yeah, when you said a little child, if I had a little child here and I asked them what all this was, they would say, I don't know. That's
Just be
pretty much
careful what
I
you
say.
agree that you know, because you're immediately separate to it then if you know it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Now, I was just wondering if you could fly here and we could spend some time. But I take you with me. I
It's
take
on
you
the
with me
cards.
anyway.
It's on the cards for the end of May next year, hopefully, all
Yeah.
being well with COVID. But yeah, lovely.
Oh,
Thank you.
All right. You know that I just think that everybody, I love this group. I love listening to everybody, and it's just helping me. You know, and I love the honesty that we, you know, some beings will have pain. That's all, I guess, you know, and so that's okay, Claire. I wrote to Claire the other day because
Lovely.
you know, I feel bad for anybody that has to go through when they're waking up and they have pain, but everybody does, I guess, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And but we can go through that without suffering from it. That's the key thing, you know. Lovely. Thanks for sharing. Okay, we'll leave it there for today, and I hope you're all not too frustrated after that. Thank you. Namaste.